Welcome into a crossover edition, Locked on Seminoles, Locked on Gators, and Locked on Canes. I am Brian Smith. This is Brandon Olson and Alex Dono, my esteemed colleagues here on the network that like to cover recruiting just as much as I do, to be quite honest. And we have a question for all of you and amongst ourselves. Why are these three programs, which are very, very much programs that have traditionally done well in state, struggling to recruit the Sunshine State? Why is that? Right now, and I put a post up on this on X, the three programs combined have 15 of the top 50 players by 24/7 in the state of Florida. That is 30%. Alex, I'm going to start with you. You're a South Floridian. The Canes have got a really good class. I think they have the best player in the country in their class in Jackson Cantwell. But they've got one kid from Dade. They've got, I believe it's 11 kids from the state of Florida. But they're not getting as many of the high-end kids, especially in South Florida. If you want to tackle that, however you want to do it, you're an expert on the area. Fire away, my friend.
Yeah, and when it comes to Miami, you have to start with Dade and Broward County, right? Because when you zoom out to the entire state of Florida, that stat that you have is wild about that, by the way. But Miami is actually doing okay in other parts of the state. They got a bunch of kids from the Orlando area committed, a bunch of kids from the Tampa area, a couple players from the Jacksonville area committed. But the oddity of it, Brian and Brandon, is that as of, right now, mid-July, Miami, of course, their bread and butter typically are Miami-Dade County and Broward County players. They have one player committed from those counties that are right around the campus, and that's Jordan Campbell, the linebacker from Miami Northwestern, who, by the way, hasn't completely shut his recruitment down. He's going to take some official visits in the fall, so I can't even say he's 1,000% lock right now. They have one player from Palm Beach County, which is not far away, committed, Javian Mallory, the running back, but Dade and Broward only have one kid committed. Let me first say, and this is not to make an excuse or anything, but I do think it's a bit of an aberration, because a weird thing about it, guys, is class of 2027, Miami's got 4 verbal commits, and 3 of them are from Dade and Broward. The other one's from Palm Beach. So they're already doing better in South Florida in the 2027 class, which is, a year and a half away from signing day versus the one that's, less than 6 months away from signing day. The way that this is shaken out for Miami is downright strange, guys. And you could go case by case on certain players. I did feel like, Calvin Russell, who ended up going to Syracuse, was a bit of a miss there. 5-star receiver from Miami Northwestern. I mean, he didn't just leave South Florida. He left the area completely. He goes to Syracuse. I mean, Fran Brown clearly did a bang-up job with that recruitment. There's no question about it. And then there's one that's coming up here, several days away, few days away from making an announcement, is Derek Cooper, who I would consider to be a must-get for Miami. Chaminade Madonna, that's, the high school program that produced Jeremiah Smith, who Miami missed out on, but also JoJo Trader, who Miami did land. And Derek Cooper is one of the best players in the class, period. But he's been trended to Texas, guys. And if he's not been trending to Texas, Ohio State, Georgia are also very much in the mix. So we'll see what happens on July 20th when he makes his announcement. So it's been a really weird class, case by case. And it's really hard for me to explain it. I had Larry Bluestein on Monday morning, who, Brian, he knows Florida recruiting and South Florida recruiting better than anybody. And, he talked about this just being kind of a weird class when it comes to the South Florida players. A lot of them were late bloomers that maybe Miami wasn't necessarily in on very early. Like even Derek Cooper was a guy who was at Cardinal Gibbons and didn't really skyrocket his stock until he went to a certain camp a couple years ago and transferred to Chaminade. But I will say, when it comes, you mentioned Miami's got a really good recruiting class right now, as does Florida and Florida State. They're all doing really well on the trail right now. Mario Cristobal, for whatever reason, maybe it'll work out for him, has gone very national with the class of 2026. I mean, you mentioned Miami's got the top recruit in America, Jackson Cantwell, verbally committed from Nixa, Missouri. Miami, you could say, missed out on one of the top slot receivers in the class, Jason Lopez, who's currently verbally committed to Florida State. But Miami landed Vance Spafford from California, who they flipped from Georgia, who a lot of us feel is probably on the field better than Jason Lopez. So it's like, well, do you say no to the kid from California just for the sake of taking the kid from South Florida? So decisions like that are being made where, and Cristobal, obviously, he's got connections in South Florida, of course, being from the area and coached here in the past, but he also has connections in California and the West Coast from his time at Oregon. He's got connections in other parts of the South, from his time at Alabama. So in certain cases, Miami has chosen to take more of a national route in recruiting. You just have to hope that doesn't alienate some of the local high schools when it does come time to try to, close kids from that class. And I'll give you a quick example on that. I mentioned Calvin Russell, who's verbally committed to Syracuse. He's got his teammate at Miami Northwestern in that receiving core, Nick Lanier, who some folks think is going to be even better than Russell. He's class of 2027. Syracuse is also very much in on Lanier's recruitment, and I think they're going to use Calvin Russell as a chip to say, hey, your buddy plays up here. He thought it was okay to leave South Florida for Syracuse. We're going to try to do the same thing with Lanier. So, you hope that in choosing more of a national route and landing some players that may be better than some of the local guys from other states, you don't alienate some of the South Florida high schools in the process.
It is a wild political deal with recruiting your home base, no matter what school you are. Like the Gators is an example. They've got a kid from Buchholz that's committed. It's a good receiver, but if they'd have passed on him, the next time a kid comes out of Buchholz, if you don't think there are hard feelings there, I can tell you firsthand from talking to coaches all over the country, that stuff matters. So it's funny, like Schnellenberger would look at this class and he'd roll over in his grave because he's the one that started it for Miami, beating Bama, beating Florida, beating Georgia, beating all the schools back in the late 70s, early 80s for kids that always left Florida. They occasionally went to UF or Florida State, but for the most part, they left the state. And he flipped all that and the Miami dynasty began. So that's weird. But they've not normally done that well, like in Jacksonville. They're getting, like the last couple of classes, they've done well there. It's really odd. Miami switched that around. It's truly odd. And by the way, Spafford is my number one slot in the country, and I've seen him play. And I've also watched him run right at me and run a 4.35 laser. That kid is shot out of a cannon. I love Jason Lopez, and I think he'll do very well at Florida State. Spafford's even better. I don't know which one will have the better college career. It's pretty close, but Spafford is a legit track star. So that'll be interesting. The last point I want to make on Miami, they've got 6 O-line committed. They're doing pretty well overall. They're starting to do better at corner, especially the class they had last year. Jabari Antoine's a kid I think will end up being a very good player at Miami. They need corner help. But now the question is, can they get the D lineman at spot? When I was growing up, Miami always killed it. I really like Tyson Bacon. I really like some of the kids they have in the class, but I know they're still looking for more D linemen. I just find that odd. They've missed like Johnson, the kid from Northwestern's committed to Georgia. We'll see where he ends up. I don't know how much validity there is in his commitment, but Miami's missed out on in-state D linemen, which they never did in the 80s and 90s. And they have now, but they've got Jason Taylor is one of the best recruiters in the country. It just shows you how hard it can be to recruit Florida because everybody recruits, obviously, Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, Texas, Notre Dame, Michigan. Everybody recruits it. But do you think they've missed the boat on recruiting overall in South Florida, or do you just think this is an aberration year? What do you think?
I mean, based on, again, 2027, where they already have like 3 times more South Florida guys committed as they do in 2026, I'm thinking it's a bit of an aberration, Brian. But real quick on what you're saying about defensive tackle specifically, I think, and again, they've got a top 10 recruiting class at this moment, so I can't complain too much. But the areas where they've struggled the most, I think, are in terms of missing out on the most targets, defensive tackle and safety. They've done really, really well at corner. They've done really well at defensive end. They've done well at most offensive line. They're crushing it, like you said. I mean, could end up being the top offensive line class in the country. But defensive tackle, they've got a couple of good players, not highly rated blue chip guys, Anthony Kennedy Jr. and Tyson Bacon, who you mentioned. But yeah, they missed out on James Johnson. They also tried for other guys in the South, not necessarily Florida kids like Bryce Perry Wright. They were in for and missed out on that one. They tried for Lamar Brown, who ended up sticking with his hometown school at LSU, which shouldn't surprise too many people. So I think Miami's going to be looking for some flips late in the cycle at defensive tackle, and we'll probably have to do the same thing at safety. So every other spot, they've done a good job. It's just been defensive tackle and safety where they've struggled.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk Gators, and we're going to find out where Brandon thinks they are, what they need to do with in-state. That is next here on this crossover edition. All been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sales, only to lose your spot to show that you've been trying to go see for a long time. It's really depressing. Live music should be about having fun, having memories, and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. As it gets closer to showtime, you can actually save up to 60% off with last-minute killer deals. The other thing that I like about Game Time is, unlike a lot of things in my life where I looked at the price, saw something I liked, took it to the register, and then the price wasn't that number at all. It was something higher. That is very frustrating with Game Time. That does not happen. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Same thing with Locked On Gators and Locked On Canes, as Brandon Olson and Alex Dono join me today. Thank you, gentlemen, for doing so. To talk basically in-state recruiting for the Big Three, it is a weird year. In case you forgot or you missed it, here's the stat that's just blown my mind. 15 of the top 50 players by 24/7 Sports in the state of Florida are committed to one of the Big Three. 30%. The last time I checked, that is, I'll just say it, pretty awful. Now, Florida State, Miami, they're still recruiting in state, but there's 2 points. They could still do better. And I don't think they're hitting on enough of the quote-unquote elite players. Too many of those kids, like we were just talking about James Johnson, are leaving the state border, at least for now. I'll let Brandon talk about that in a minute. But this is a problem if you're like all three of these brands are not where they need to be. I think we can all safely assume that based on the last 5 years. It has been topsy-turvy for all three of them. They've all had moments, and then they mess it up, all three of them. It's just bizarre. So, Brandon, let's talk about the Gators class a little bit. In-state, they're doing pretty well. They don't normally recruit South Florida like the Canes do. Noles, honestly, have always recruited, and I'll talk about that in the last segment. They've got like a half dozen or so from South Florida. What do you think about the in-state recruiting for the Gators? Who do you think they've missed on? Is there anything they need to do differently? And how can they, quote-unquote, get more of the big fish from inside the Sunshine State?
Yeah, I do think that obviously it'd be nicer to get some of these big name targets. I will also say that there's people that list Kenya Pepe as you know, because IMG. And
he's a California kid for the record.
Yeah. So we will say that there are some ranking numbers that are just wrong. Let's just be honest about that one. But also there's some kids that Florida initially just wasn't even in on, and I think the context matters when you miss some of the top in-state kids. You know, Trenton Henderson was someone that was very much trending in Florida's direction. A number came out, and that LSU was willing to pay him, and Florida wasn't willing to pay him. And that happens, right? The report is basically, not by me, but what has been reported is basically that then the money had to go to either Trenton Henderson or Kevin Ford.
But by the way, I just want I contained myself for the previous 10 minutes, but since somebody else decided to open up the Pandora's box of selective use of money, I will say that there may have been some of that with Calvin Russell as well. I will give you back the floor. I'll give you back the floor.
Yeah, hey, it's context, and I know that there's people typing right now, "Ha, nerd." I don't care. It's context matters to me. And, you know, the report, again, is that the money would go to either Trenton Henderson or Kevin Ford, and they chose Kevin Ford from Duncanville, Texas, instead of Trenton Henderson from Pensacola. And there's situations like that. Florida was – I'm not going to say Florida was going to land Chauncey Kennan, but they were very much in on Chauncey Kennan, and it was like, hey, we're taking two corners. And they had their 2 corners by the time that Chauncey made his announcement. I still would have gladly taken him, but that's just how it is with James Johnson. Reports started coming out this past weekend that, hey, maybe Florida's making some traction with James Johnson and maybe trying to make something happen there. And maybe that happens. Isaiah Williams, one-time Florida commit, now at Ole Miss. Now reports are that he's very much considering Florida again. I will also say this, and I apologize to anybody that may get offended by this, but a lot of these recruiting services and ranking sites kind of have no idea what the hell they're looking at with certain things and a lot of recruits, and I very much disagree with it. And I think that a lot of it has become very politicized as to, well, are you at my camp? No, then there goes your ranking dipping and stuff like that. I am putting less stock in rankings and recruiting services than ever before because of all the things we hear about how politicized it's become. And so I get it. I would love to land the top players at every position and in every state, really, but especially in the state of Florida. But I do think that, Florida landed CJ Bronaugh, who I think is a tremendous corner. I don't care that he's ranked, I think 72nd nationally on 24/7. Don't care. I think he's a tremendous football player. Kendall Gervil was just, beats the crap out of people. Like, you watch his film and he collides with an offensive line. I'm pretty sure the first play of Kendall Gervil's film, he collides with a pulling lineman and the lineman takes like 2 steps backwards. And that's just like raw power that I don't care what your ranking is. You're a baller there. And so for me, like, I would love to land more of the top in-state talent, but I do think that Florida's landed a good amount of in-state talent for now. They're trending for some more guys in-state, but also Florida has gone kind of big game hunting outside of the state. They've gotten Marquez Daniel from Alabama, KJ Ford from Texas, Hezzy Kent the other day from Georgia. They've been landing great players from out of state, and honestly, it's a talent acquisition business. Billy Napier, has really hammered that since he got hired. He's like, it's a talent acquisition business. Acquire that talent, develop that talent. And I don't think if the players work out, I don't think anybody's going to care about in 3 years where you got the player from. You got them to your school, you found them, you developed them, and you win games. And that's really what I'm going to care about. I know that I would love to land that top talent that people think, but I really like this class so far for Florida. So that it's as simple as that. The film looks really good. I'm happy with the players. I do think that you can add some more big names, but they're good players.
A couple of notes on the Gators. They got 18 commits. 10 are from the state of Florida. Surprisingly to me, they've only got 3 from Georgia. I would figure that number's higher, but they've done, like Brandon said, they've done a pretty good job nationally. They got Will Griffin as their quarterback. They got Tramel Jones last year, so 2 in-state guys. I think DQ Forkba is the must-get guy for them to get a really good linebacker. I don't think that you're looking at a situation where Malik Morris is going to end up at linebacker. So if I'm right on that, he's a pretty big guy. I think he'll end up playing defensive line. They wouldn't have a commit. Forkba's probably going to be Michigan or Florida. We're waiting to see when his decision is. But overall, like the receiver group they've got last year, this year, a lot of them from in-state, they're probably doing the best over a 2-year window between the big 3 in-state, like balance. But it's not that hard, as we all know, to sell UF. And I just think that, like with Miami and FSU, the only thing that UF is really missing are just some of the elite kids. And yes, part of that is IMG. That program sends kids to unofficials to all 3 of the programs all the time. Those schools aren't getting the kids that much. And I actually spoke to someone yesterday that was at another event. I'll leave the person out of it. He told me there is extremely low buzz for the big 3. And I'm like, oh boy. And the event is in the state of Florida. So I was like, that's ridiculous. But right now, I think UF is doing the best job of the 3, consistently recruiting it. But it's a weird year. When we come back.
Hold on real quick, though. Brian, UF has something that Miami and Florida State unfortunately do not have, and it's that SEC badge. We're
100%. It matters. Like, I know fans out there on this site and on Dono's site won't like hearing it. I'm here to tell you 100-fold. the number of times I've had a kid tell me that playing in the SEC matters is at least a part of his factor, I couldn't count.
Yeah. It's always something Miami and Florida State have to fight against.
Absolutely.
It always is. And
I mean, I don't know what else to say other than it just means more.
Okay. I'll remember that when they choke in a game this year, but that's another point.
Still going to beat the crap out of FSU.
I don't know. Like, I don't trust that they're going to be healthy on either team. Like, games at the end of the year, I leave alone for now. But all three of these teams, to win more of these battles, as we get ready to transition one more time, they got to win games that people want to see. They all play each other, but I'm talking about against Clemson, against Georgia, against like these schools in the out-of-state games stink right now, and it kills recruiting. They've got to win those games, and I know the coaches at these staffs know that as well. But could all three of these teams be top 5 recruiting schools again and really quick? Yes, but it's about winning games on the field. So it's possible. I'm just saying that they all have the potential. It's not hard to sell Florida State, Florida, Miami.
Oh yeah, no. My little like, oh, it's shaky about being top 5 ranked is because these recruiting sites don't know what they're looking at. So I'll take the more talented players for rankings, and that's fine.
That's fair enough. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about Florida State. I think they're the lowest of the 3 rosters talent-wise, but they've closed the gap. That is next here on this crossover. As for the Noles, they finally got some consistency at the quarterback position, getting Jaden O'Neal, the running back position. They get a local kid. They got 5 really fast receivers. They could run a track team out there. Got one of the most athletic tight ends. My concern is still O-line. They only have 2 commits. That's concerning, to say the least. They need to get more. Defensive line is nasty. Most of the kids from Georgia, ironically, they're just like UF and Miami. They're not hitting the home run in-state. In-state D linemen are not friendly to the big 3 right now. Like, it's bad. It is really bad. And then linebacker, they need another kid, but they did get Chauncey Cannon. Brandon was talking about that earlier. They got a pretty good DB class. This is Florida State's best class in the better part of a decade. The problem is it's still not a top 10 class. At least it's close. Out of these 3, I would say Miami's is the best. UF, Florida State are pretty close. I don't know which one I would take. I'd have to look at it closer, but this should be the bottom end for like what UF and Florida State signed. Same really for Miami most of the time too. Like Miami, Dono, 7 to 10 range, I would say is what their class is, probably most of the sites, and that's where I would have it. But the biggest difference, and you and I talked about this last week, Alex, when Florida State, Miami, or Florida, pick whichever one you want, when they're really good, we know they're going to get skill kids. It's the guys in the trenches, O-line and D-line. Yeah. Because if you, like the state of Florida, just as an example, there are roughly 40 players a year just at wide receiver that can play in the FBS. That's insane. So skill, if you're ever sucking at that spot, that's on which Florida State did last year, by the way. That is on you and your staff for failing to recruit and hire the right coaches to recruit. But Florida State, they got 5 guys committed at wide receiver. All of them could run. That's being fixed. Skill spots are good. They got to get better in the trenches. But I want to give a shout out to Miami and UF again. They both got pretty good O-line classes in any way you want to measure it. Balance, size, tackles, whatever. They've done better. Florida State's still in on a couple kids. If they don't get Wilson Zaire, really good offensive tackle, then I'm going to be concerned again. You can't miss an O-line again. They had 15 guys lined up for OBs, and they've got 2 commits on O-line. That is not the ratio that I'm looking for. So I don't know like what you guys want to talk about, but like Dono and I have discussed, like Miami has kind of entered that realm into a top 5 O-line school. And that's not what they're known for historically, but it's had its moments. Right now, it's their best spot. Depth-wise, recruiting, all the things combined. Jackson Cantwell, I think everybody expects to play right away. Florida State, got Ernest Rankins, is like an incredible D-line class. There's going to be some great battles, and I'm looking forward to that. But if Florida State wants to win against UF and Miami, you don't necessarily have to recruit what Miami has on the O-line, but the numbers got to be better. So Florida State's closed the gap, but it's still not where it needs to be. Gentlemen, I'll just open the floor. What do you think about the state of Florida in general? What needs to happen for these 3 programs to, quote unquote, take the next step, win their league, Or like, Brandon, when's the last time UF beat Georgia? I don't even remember.
I don't like talking about things like that. Thank you very much.
I wonder why. It's been a long time, is my guess.
Yeah. It's been a good, nice, long while since Florida. I mean, really, outside, which we can acknowledge this. I'm not going to say that Florida would have beaten Georgia last year had DJ Lagway stayed healthy.
They might have.
I will say that they were up 10-0 in the second quarter when he did get hurt.
Yeah.
And I will say, and they still almost won with Aiden Warner at quarterback playing his first snap. Sorry, let me get this. It's been a while since I've said it, so let me just get this right. A redshirt freshman transfer quarterback walk-on from Yale came in and was playing against Georgia when DJ Lagway got hurt and they were up 10-0, and they still almost won the game. And so I'm not saying that Florida would have won that game, but I am saying that Florida was up 10-0 and winning, or at least trending toward winning in that game.
I noticed the Florida folks, they love these hypotheticals. That's what had DJ Lagway had an extra week, the 41-17 wouldn't have happened last year. You know?
I mean, if Billy Napier was a better football coach, 41-17 wouldn't have happened last year. That's not what it is.
Fair enough.
Quote of the day.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I got no problem saying it. I actually had this conversation with someone on Sunday that talking about, me saying last year Billy Napier should have been fired, and I still stand by that. Like I'm not going to say that all of a sudden, it was ridiculous to suggest he should have been fired. You got blown out 41-17 at home to start the year against Miami after getting demolished the year before on the road against Utah to open the year. Last year, you lost to Marcel Reed in his first start for Texas A&M. He didn't throw the ball for the final 25 minutes of the game, and you still lost. Like there were you lost Tennessee because of coaching. There's no other way to go about it. And so I think it's ridiculous that it's like, they ended the year winning 4 games, and so that justifies everything that happened previously. Like, and look, Texas, I get it. You were losing that game no matter what happened after losing both Graham and DJ Lagway. But the reason that you had a redshirt freshman transfer walk-on quarterback from Yale starting is because you didn't have that position figured out depth-wise. And so it's like, yeah, I get it. That's who you were down to, but you were down to because that's who your quarterback 3 was, a walk-on from Yale coming off a torn ACL. Like that's who your QB3 was going into the year. So I get that there are excuses and all that, but like, let's not act that because you won 4 games at the end of the year, all of a sudden it was ludicrous to suggest you losing your job there. Because had you lost to Tennessee and then fired him, nobody would have blamed you. Nobody would have been like, oh yeah, you were about to go on a massive heater to end the year. Like in the moment, that was still the right call. I don't care what anyone says. If Billy Napier was a better coach, he wouldn't be 19-19 right now. Like he would have more wins. He would have less bad losses. So if Billy Napier was a better coach, that's my hypothetical for 41-17. If Billy Napier was a better coach, you don't lose 41-17.
I'll give you that.
I think DJ Lagway against Georgia is the only hypothetical I use. And even then, I don't go, you win that game. I say that you were winning that game when he was out there. But yeah, it's ridiculous to me. Just go beat Georgia's ass for once, please. Like you had the opportunity to do it last year. You couldn't win the injury, sure, whatever it is. But like Florida, like you got to just go out there and win games consistently. Last year, we dealt with this with the entire 2025 class. There's recruits openly saying, I don't want to commit to Florida because I don't know who the coach is going to be. Like, I don't know if he's still going to be there. Jamrock Grimsley said that in the 2024 class. Like, that was a conversation in the 2024 recruiting class. So I think for Florida, just go win games and you're good. And I will say, Brian, you and I both thought that this was going to be an even slower burn than it's been for Florida recruiting wise because it was it was you're going to deal with the are you going to be my coach in a year conversation that you had to deal with last year. And somehow this year the class is better right now than it was at this point last year. So you've added some stability there, but it's just about going out there. And Dono, I believe you mentioned this on your show the other day it's about going out there and showing some sense of consistent results out there and consistent growth and consistent success. And like we could talk about Florida's had 2 All-American offensive linemen since Billy Napier got there. But you know what they're not doing is bringing in these big, massive offensive line classes. They've got 5 offensive line commits right now. That's the biggest class they've had since Billy Napier got here.
Yeah.
Like they're like, you just got to go out there and show some sense of consistency, show that you can go out there and get it done and not be, well, depending on the week, are you going to show up? Are you going to go out there and upset Utah in your first game and then fold to Vanderbilt later that year? Like you got to show some kind of consistency there. And I think for Florida, you do that and you'll be right back at the top. I think this staff does a great job with all the roster building, but just go win some damn football games and you'll be fine.
I co-sign on that from the Miami point of view as well. It's what, because I cannot question Mario Cristobal's recruiting chops, because he's proven it at Miami. He proved it at Oregon. He proved it, in lesser roles at Alabama. So I know the guy can recruit, and he still is recruiting. Like, again, Miami has a fine class, including the top player in the country, Jackson Cantwell, committed. So when I complain about missing out on player XYZ, it's a little bit nitpicky, but the point is, Miami is going to be able to win more of those battles if you can show top players around the country that you can get to the college football playoff here. You can actually win ACC championships here, which is something Miami hasn't done since they joined the conference 2 decades ago. And so, the greater point, and Brian and Brandon, I think you'll both appreciate this, is, for the very good job Mario Cristobal has done in recruiting so far, where he's landed a top 10 class, a top 5 class, one class that was just outside the top 10. Like, he's doing a bang-up job recruiting at Miami, but for those first few cycles, you can sell players on what you're building. Once you get to the 4th, 5th cycles, you have to sell them on what you built. Like, you can't sell them on the construction only so long. Eventually, you have to say, and listen, Miami obviously had a better year last year than in previous seasons. You win 10 games, which is great, but you fell short of the ACC championship game. You fell short of the college football playoff. So that's the next step. Like, you have to show you can get into those games, because guess what? When you're recruiting 5-star players, especially the ones who aren't from the area, who didn't grow up Miami fans, like, you're trying to land a top player out of Georgia or a top player out of California, like, you have to show them, like, you can come here and win big, right? Because they may decide, well, if I go to Ohio State or I go to Georgia, I'm going to have an opportunity to be playing for national championships. Maybe I can't do that at Miami. So you have to show them you can do that at Miami, and a lot of these problems will take care of themselves.
I think for Miami, it's also the way that they lose. Like, it feels like Miami, it just feels like they were such bad losses. And I don't even mean to do it as like a troll. Like, in 2023, losing to Georgia Tech the way you lost to Georgia Tech is a really bad look.
Being up 21-0 against Syracuse and losing that game, it's a bad look.
Yeah, it's not even so much losing the games. It's when you lose them and how you lose them that I think has really gone against Miami in that regard. Because, of course, if I'm Billy or if I'm Mike Norvell, which he's not really in a spot to talk about anybody right now, but if I'm Billy or if I'm Mike Norvell, then I'm going to go, look at that coaching job. That's bad coaching that you lost those games in the ways that they lost them. Like, that would be my negative recruiting pitch, is that you lost those games because of poor coaching.
Yeah, right now, I have no sympathy for either one of you after what I covered last year. So I'm just going to let that ride. I said it when I came on Dono's Locked On ACC show. I said, these guys ain't winning more than 2 or 3 games when they started 0-2. And everybody laughed at me. I ain't nobody laughing now. That was just bad.
I'm laughing for a different reason. I'm laughing at them. I just want to make that very clear.
Yeah.
Last year was 4-6 season since 1974. I was 1. That's a bad sign. So they have a lot. Yeah, it is what it is. It's just, you have to win these big games, and all 3 programs are in different spots. Florida State will have the biggest rebound of the 3, but look what they're jumping over. It's like jumping over a nickel. So it's not that hard. Miami should be at a 10-win season. Florida's schedule is the hardest of the 3 by a mile, but they should still win conservatively 8 games with that roster. Do they? Do we really trust Billy and close?
I'll tell you this: if he doesn't, I'm going to be sitting right back here calling for his job again. I'll tell you that much. I do not give a damn.
I know you don't, and you should, but that's the point. Like, there's a reason these kids are leaving. When I was in my 20s, 75-80% of the kids in the top 25 to top 50 stayed in state. It's the polar opposite now. It's because it's not cool to like pick one of the 3 to go to these schools like it used to be. Yeah. So They got to win these games. They're like, Dono was talking about, you can't lose to Georgia Tech and Syracuse. And so it's just, it doesn't work that way with recruits. Florida State, they got to beat somebody. 2-10, really, at Florida State? Come on, man. A dead rat can recruit to Florida State, but you got to have something to sell them on. So this is a problem we'll probably talk about after signing day, because there's going to be flips. There's going to be other stuff. And all three are having overall good classes. But if they were doing better on the field, all three of them would be in the top 10 right now. I'm 100% confident in that. So we'll see how the start of the season goes. Real quick, before we end, does anybody here think that any of their coaches or anybody else, just coaching-wise nationally, who's getting the axe after this year? If you just pick one guy, it could be ACC, SEC. Who's getting the axe?
There we go.
Yeah, okay. I was like, wait, huh?
It won't be Norvell because his contract's still too big.
Yeah, that's right.
It's still around 50. He's not getting fired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was reading something today. This is obviously not related to any of our three programs. That Brent Pry at Virginia Tech, that seat better be getting hot, because you talk about underperforming based on some of the talent that they've had. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Virginia Tech used to be a nationally relevant program. Under the glory days of Frank Beamer. They have fallen so far from that. So that if you go by the FanDuel odds, like that's at least in the ACC, that's the guy who has the hottest seat in terms of first coach fired out of that conference.
I think Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, especially against that schedule, I think the FanDuel odds are 5.5 for them. Yeah. He's not a good enough recruiter to overcome it. We'll see. I think those are a couple of guys, but I've been told that this is going to be a rather big year for coaching change. I'm curious to see if that comes to fruition, because with the new payout, with the NIL and all that, where's all this money coming from? Because buyouts are only going up. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know what's Napier owed. Is it 20 plus still, Brandon, or is it going to be under 20 after this year?
I think it's going to drop to about 17.
That's a totally different deal than 50. You know what I mean? That's just not even.
If Billy got fired last year, it would have been. I forgot the number, but I used to know it on the tattooed into my brain. But I think it was mid-high 20s, and that would have been the second highest buyout ever paid, behind only Jimbo. And so that's the kind of insane number we're talking about. Like that, the 50 would be very crazy. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna miss making fun of Hugh Freeze when he's gone at the end of this year. Because I'm gonna miss making fun of him, because I don't know what else to say other than that guy freaking sucks. I don't know how else to put it. He sucks. And guess what? So does the Auburn fan base. I just want to throw that out there. They all suck. In every sport, they suck. Just want to throw that out there. I'm gonna miss making fun of Hugh and the fan base.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to end up here. There's still a lot of questions for the Big Three recruiting in state. There's a lot of reasons for it, but thank you for tuning in. Everybody have a good one.